You are listening to the Southwestern American Choral Directors Association Connections podcast, where we will interview choral directors, leaders, and movers and shakers within our region. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Wall. We hope you enjoy these conversations. Please like and subscribe this YouTube channel for future content. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Connections podcast. I'm excited about today's episode and to introduce you to a couple of different formats we're going to be using on the podcast this season. One of those is to have a few of our guest hosts coming on. Today, we'll have Children and Community Youth R&R Chair Nathan Wubbena is interviewing Chris Maunu. Chris is a conductor, educator, and composer based in Portland, Oregon. He serves as the artistic director of the acclaimed Pacific Youth Choir, affiliate faculty at the Portland State University School of Music, and artistic director of the professional ensemble Choral in Scola. You can read so much more about him and his full bio down in the description of this video, as always. But I don't want to delay too much further. I want you to get right into this episode, but please do remember to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, and be sure to share these interviews with your choral colleagues. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Here is Nathan Wubbena and Chris Maunu.
Well, welcome, Chris. We're excited to have you here and talk to you. My name, for those of you who don't know, is Nathan Wubbena, and I am the children's rep for Southwestern ACDA. Chris here is our children's rep for Northwestern ACDA, and I brought him here to talk to you a little bit about his experience and ask him some questions about some of the things that I have seen strengthen him. So, Chris, do you want to tell me and those listening a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Nathan, and thanks Southwest ACDA for doing this and having me on. It's an honor. So yeah, Chris Maunu. I'm 1 year into my role as artistic director of the Pacific Youth Choir. It's a program that serves students in kindergarten all the way through 12th grade in Portland, Oregon. So prior to that, I taught 17 years of high school choir at Arvada West High School, just outside of the Denver metro area. 1 year before that, I taught middle school choir in Jefferson County as well, again, on the west side of Denver. I grew up in a really small town in South Dakota, had 12 people in my graduating class, so very, very small.
Oh, yeah.
In the sort of, people think of South Dakota, you probably think of like the Black Hills and Mount Rushmore and stuff. I was on the opposite corner of the state, northeastern part of the state, where there's just a whole lot of farmland and a whole lot of flatness and a lot of small towns. Really nice place to grow up, actually. And then I got my undergrad in South Dakota at a little college in Aberdeen called Northern State University in music education, and then moved to Lincoln, Nebraska. I got my master's there at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and then moved out to the Denver area to start my teaching career. So yeah, I'm a recent transplant to the Pacific Northwest, and loving life. Life is good.
Nice. I have to, as a Boulder native, I have to say, go Buffs, boo Huskers. But
yeah, well, and yeah, the Huskers have not been very good in recent years. But when I went there, it was kind of funny because they didn't really think of CU as a rival. I think it was like CU thought of Nebraska as a rival, and Nebraska was like, nah, whatever, you CU Buffs. But now Nebraska has been terrible for a very long time. So, there you go.
There you go. That's great. Well, can you tell me about some key points in your musical journey that were kind of foundational to who you are today? Some things that, either changed you or were a big realization along the way?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. That's such a huge question. I think probably the first one was when I was in high school. Like I mentioned, I grew up in this really small town, and I participated in choir and band, but it really was not the experience I think that a majority of people have if they're in a larger school with an established program. So my experience was really limited. So I participated in the South Dakota High School All-State Chorus, and Dr. Edie Copley was my clinician, and it was definitely a life-changing moment where I sort of realized what the possibilities are with choral music, and it was really inspirational. I actually didn't start out my career as a music major. My undergrad, I started out as a business major, but I was involved in the music program. And when I got to Northern State University, that's when I was around more people who sort of unapologetically were enthusiastic about music and embraced its awesomeness. And that was the point at which I really fell in love with it and became a music major and never turned back. And there's, you can go down the list with people who have inspired me since then at, various times in my life. But I think we all go back to kind of those early stages and think like, if it wasn't for this situation or this person, like, what would I be doing now? For me, I don't know. I might be managing a business somewhere. Who knows? But I'm so grateful I sort of stumbled into this career.
Yeah, it's kind of wild how, thinking back to these moments, that if they hadn't happened, how much of a different life you might have left or lived,
Wow.
I mean, in any circumstance. Yeah. And I think you're right. Going back to those foundational moments, because, when I think of my musical journey, you start initially with some of the foundational teachers, that started it all in, whatever grade level you were at.
Absolutely.
All the way through it. Yeah. And I love that you talked about the, honor choir, the all-state choir being such an awesome experience, because that is for a lot of people, and for people who, who are in my adult choir, will talk about their all-state experience and just remember it with joy. It's something that people remember for a long time, as we all know. And of course, I can tell you for Southwestern ACDA, when we're in Albuquerque, we have some phenomenal clinicians that are going to be coming up for our region's conference there. So hopefully we'll have a lot of people that are going to sign up for those. So you've had a lot of success that I've seen in creating some really wonderful music with your students, and bringing that to a variety of stages too, lots of different places that you've performed. What do you think your strengths as an educator are?
I feel like I'm in a job interview here.
Yeah.
How do I talk about my strengths and still be like super humble? No. I think for me, it really comes down to vulnerability and authenticity. That's a really hard thing. Like, you can't just these are the 3 steps to create a vulnerable, authentic culture in your classroom. But I think it really comes down to being able to model that for your students. Early in my career, I can remember going to conferences and, obviously being inspired by clinicians who were there providing workshops and so forth. And I would often leave those conferences and then try to be different in the classroom. And I found that just never stuck. And I think I was probably a decade in when I finally just started leaning in more to just who I am. So for me, I'm not a particularly way out there charismatic conductor. I'm a little bit more subdued. I have a gentleness about me when I'm on the podium. And that's the point of my career where my students, I think, started to buy in more to me. I think success started to come my way, whatever that is, whatever that word means in our profession. It's different for everybody. But that's when things started to click for me. I think the students, when they see somebody being authentic on the podium, they can pick up on that. That does not necessarily mean always wearing your heart on your sleeve and being really emotional, although that's an aspect of it. Young people just have this really innate ability to pick up on, okay, is this person putting on, or are they a real person? And I think everything gets built out from that point, because students need to feel safe, they need to feel comfortable for learning to take place.
Yeah.
I think if yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I mean, I think you're right on point. I think that's a really interesting thing to say, and I agree with it quite a bit, is that they will see your authenticity, and then I think that you being authentic then gives them permission to be authentic, right? And we all know that when we don't have to have a barrier between ourselves and the audience, or the barrier between the people we sing with and perform with, then we can make much more beautiful music because of it. You know, we feel more connected, because that connectedness is so important. So I like that. I think that's a really important thing. And, you know, I think the same kind of thing has happened to me too, where when I'm my authentic self, students respond better to it. And I wouldn't say that I wear my heart on my sleeve at all. That's not who I am exactly as a director, but I definitely, I'm goofy, you know? and so I'm not afraid to be who I am with them. And I think they respond to that too, you know, they connect. So I think it doesn't matter how you're being authentic, who you are. I think it just matters that you are, you know, not trying to put on a face, and people generally respond to that.
And I think we all have a little bit of envy for other people's gifts. You know, I watch people who are have a certain charisma on stage, and like, oh, I wish I had a little bit of that, or a little bit of this. But we all have something special to give to our students, and if we lean into our own special, authentic gifts, that's the path towards the greatest success. And in my mind, you know, the other skills need to be there too. You know, I think I have a good ear. When there's a lot of sound coming at me, I can quickly disseminate, you know, what needs to happen to make it better. But again, I think it goes back to that pedagogical authenticity. Like, if the tenors are out of tune, I usually will not say, like, tenors, you're flat, fix it. You know, that takes the humanity out of it. It's more like, okay, I think we are carrying a little bit too much weight up to that E natural. How about we lighten the mechanism and place it a little bit more forward and see what happens? You know, so I think that kindness, that authenticity, that vulnerability can show up in every aspect of what we do, our pedagogy as well as our culture.
Yeah, that's great. So, you know, what you said a little bit earlier leads a little bit into the next thing I wanted to ask you about. You know, you said we all have that jealousy for other things, that, you know, you see strengths in other people where you feel like you don't have that strength necessarily as much as you would like, right? So we all have areas that we're working on in one way or the other, you know. I know I have plenty. So what are you personally working on improving right now?
Yeah, I think it was Brene Brown that said that comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're all kind of wired that way. Just as we've evolved, we're always needing to make sure that we feel like we're part of the tribe and all. You know, there's some human evolution behind that, I think. But I think if you allow it to debilitate yourself as a conductor, that's where you really get into trouble. So, like, the comparison itself, if you can compartmentalize that and maybe learn and be inspired by that, I don't think that's like totally a bad thing. But when I look back at my career, I think my first 10, 11, 12 years, I really allowed that to negatively influence my self-confidence and so forth. Sorry, I went on a tangent. So you had asked about like what are you
working on doing right now? Where are you in your journey now?
Yeah, I mean, it depends if I'm looking professionally or, you know, what I'm working on with my therapist. I think probably where those two roads meet would be my time management. So stepping away from the public school classroom where your day is literally planned out by the minute for you.
Right.
to like, okay, now I'm primarily working from home. I have composing projects. I'm preparing for guest conducting engagements. I'm preparing for my once a week rehearsals, and I have to like try to motivate myself for that. That's a challenge, because I think motivation is a tricky thing. Like we wait for it to happen, but it doesn't always come. So like I've had to learn like, okay, I need to create a structure for myself. And, because I have a lot to do, but I don't have that structure laid out for me. So I have to create that in my own life and follow that plan and not wait for the motivation to arrive, that, just to go forth and do the thing, and motivation kind of happens. So that's probably been the biggest challenge right now at this stage in my career. So I'm working on that, making progress.
Just out of curiosity, just going off of it, when you think about your career for 17 years, right, as an educator in the public school system, and now shifting to, the nonprofit sector, right? For anyone who might be interested into shifting that space that hasn't yet, what are the things that you've seen as a different thing? It could be a positive, negative, or indifferent, but what are some shifts that you've seen making that change?
Yeah, as a public school teacher, you're with your students so much longer period of time. You might be with them 250 minutes a week every day. Typically the model, like in a nonprofit youth choir, you'll have rehearsals once a week. And even if they're a little bit longer, like 75 minutes or 90 minutes, that's a different thing. So I think one of the big differences I've noticed is knowledge retention is a little bit different. When you see your students every day, it's a little bit more even of an incline of getting them ready for a performance, for example, where, if you're seeing your kids once a week, you have those little dips, right? And it's, in general, you're still making progress. So that's probably been the biggest difference. Well, it's a learning experience. You have strategic planning and donor relations and fundraising and development that, we do have a full-time executive director who's trained in development and marketing. But when you're an artistic director, like, you're the person that the donors want to talk to about things and hear about the vision and so forth. So yeah, my week might be filled with random coffee dates with partners in the community or potential donors, or things like that. So it's still a full-time job, but your energy kind of goes in all these different directions. So that's been an adjustment as well.
Yeah, that's an adjustment that I had to make too, I think. And my organization, now doesn't have an executive director, right? We have our board members who take on a lot of responsibilities on their own. Luckily, we have, board members with great responsibility and great experience. But, there are some roles that fall to me or to our administrative staff too. And every nonprofit organization is different in the roles that, you have to fill as an artistic director, or, whatever role you have within the organization at different levels. So it's interesting to hear your experience in the shift too, for me.
Well, and it's not always, even if you do have that executive and artistic, it's not always black and white. Like, so much of the stuff still falls into that gray, like, whose responsibility is it? It's probably both people kind of working in tandem to get whatever it is done. So it's been a unique, and we just went through a hiring process where we hired somebody new just a couple of months ago. So we're kind of in that stage of figuring out the dance and partnership there.
Yeah. And, I agree that that there's a big difference when you have, and what I saw when I started doing children's choir, because I was teaching while I started children's choir initially, and And building connections with students, I felt was a lot more challenging with the once a week because, for one, you have one once a week, and so you just got to go. You got to move through everything to make sure that they're prepared and they feel comfortable performing. And there's also oftentimes not like the unintentional casual interactions with the students, and so I felt like it took me much longer to build a relationship with a student. And so, that's what I'm continuing to work on now myself. That's one of the things that, I'm working on, is trying to build connections, between me and my students, between my students with each other, because they talk about the same thing. We just go, go, go. And, I try to give moments, but the times when I feel like people build the strongest connections are just casual interactions where there's no forced element to it at all. And they're just kind of in this place with this person without anything else to do except to talk to them,
Yeah, it's a challenge. Even as a public school teacher, I viewed the music making as the path into building that connection. I know some people are like so great at doing the team building exercises and all of the sorts of fun things to build that, and nothing wrong with that. But that has been the one thing I think that has made it somewhat possible, is it's that same approach. Like, we do this thing together, we work hard on this thing together, and there's this underlying comfortability and culture and bond that starts to happen. And then we're thinking of things like building in social time in between, like the two choirs, whatever. We're strategizing. But I think the ultimate thing is time, right? So it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that, you said was a strength, and I would agree, that I felt like I never actually saw into your classroom and saw what you did, but seeing the way your students responded to you in general, and, the conversations that were had, surrounding that, I felt like you definitely had a strength of cultivating a safe and welcoming space for your singers. So what do you think? Is there anything else besides what you had said before that's helped you do that? What do you think are some keys to success that others can employ to make that happen in their own?
Yeah, definitely. Being intentional about repertoire choices, not shying away from using what music can do for us to approach more difficult things, using repertoire to respond to what's going on in the students' lives, whether that be, mental health, depression, and one particular program we did at the Colorado Conference and then at Southwest ACDA was based around a shooting threat that happened at our school, and the kids, had our classroom to help process through that grief. So there's that. Taking time when you need it. Like, sometimes it's more valuable to not sing and just to be together. And I've never been afraid to do that. Who cares if the performance is a week away? If the students just need, if something hard is going on or a challenge is going on, the choir room is the place that they can express themselves, express their feelings. Their other teachers are often not taking time to do that. So that's at the core of it as well. I'm really thoughtful about my repertoire choices. I agonize over every decision. I often, I won't choose a piece often unless it hits me in a certain emotional way. And it's not like I have the ultimate decision-making around quality repertoire, but I think if you're going to teach a piece of music, you need to have a deep connection to that piece and have a strong reason why you chose that piece. I think all of these things are kind of working in tandem there.
Yeah, I agree. I can't just do a piece just because whatever reason it's there. I want to have something that I like about it that I can be excited about, and then then share that excitement with students, or connect to it or whatever it might be, or not even just students, singers in general, it doesn't matter the age level that we go through. So you've been able to take choirs to larger conferences, like you took them to National ACDA, right? As well as other awesome opportunities. So what have you been able to do to help your singers reach this level of performance? If there's someone out there that's like, oh, I really like to make that happen. What are some things that you can, feedback that you can give them for the process of, either preparing for the event itself or preparing for the audition, or anything else, whether it's the local, regional, national level, whatever.
Yeah, it's just a ridiculous amount of like really hard work, kind of being relentless about things. I many times my students would get annoyed with me because I know in my head, I can hear the sound that I'm going after, and I know that they can do it.
Right.
But if it doesn't take just one time to tell them a thing, it's like you have to be on them every day, over and over, until that neurological connection is made, and they start to remember to do it themselves. And that's the greatest joy, I think, as being a teacher and a conductor, when you start, when there's something you've been hammering on, and all of a sudden you start seeing the students do it or make adjustments on their own, or if you ask them for feedback and they start to say the thing that, like, oh yeah, that's what needs to be done or needs to be said. So Arvada West, where I taught, I think one of the things I'm most proud of is, it's just a quote unquote regular school with a wide SES range. There are kids that don't take private lessons. I mean, in any given year, out of 250, 300 people in the program, there'd maybe be like 3 kids that took private lessons. I think my background as my master's is in vocal performance, not conducting. And I think approaching a group of singers oftentimes as a voice class and just really focusing on healthy tone production is beneficial as well for a developing singer. So sure. Yeah, I think a lot of those things are at play, but ultimately it's just being relentless, a lot of hard work, knowing where the students can rise to and not stopping until they get there.
Just out of curiosity, did you the recordings that you submitted, did you use them from concerts, or did you actually record them specifically for submission?
Yeah, that high school auditorium at Arvada West might be the driest acoustic in all of Colorado. I mean, it's kind of like not deep and it's really wide. It's beautiful, but not a super great place to sing. So yeah, I don't think we've ever gotten a good recording in that room. So we would usually find a church in downtown Denver to go to that had a little bit more of a forgiving acoustic and have somebody come record. And it wasn't just like the students thinking about like, oh, we have another thing we got to go record. Like they loved that experience of just being in a nice acoustic. So even though I'm thinking of it as a thing we got to get done on a year-to-year basis, it's kind of a treat for them to get into a nice acoustic and sing. So
yeah, I think you're right. It's a fun event, and it just great experience to give them too. The idea of recording and what's that process like, and how does that look? You can give them a behind the scenes show in that too. It was interesting for me when I recorded with Cantora. That was
yeah. Another thing I'll add to that, just from a practical standpoint, is don't feel like if you're submitting to perform at a conference, don't feel like you have to have something super difficult. Mm-hmm. Choose repertoire that your kids will be successful at. I remember sitting on a CMEA committee listening to audition recordings, and I don't remember the school that this choir was from, but I listened to a recording of a French piece in unison, and it was probably my favorite thing I heard of all the choirs I listened to. So something that's a little more simple, that's just done really artistically and really well, that can go a long way.
I always choose unison pieces at the beginning of the year because it lets me really focus in on everything else, so we can sing really musically and focus in on production and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
It's really important. And you're right, it can be super successful. I think that goes for like all state auditions too, at least, in Colorado when they choose their own audition piece, right? I think sometimes, I know I made the mistake as a young educator of assigning my students a more difficult piece to try to be impressive or whatever. And then I realized, no, we need to assign them something that student can do really well and be impressive because they do it well, right? Rather than because of the piece.
Yeah.
There's actually one of my favorite songs is Bird Song by Paul Reed. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. And there's a really lovely recording from the Tennessee All-State Women's Choir. And it's partially in unison, partially in two-part. It's not very difficult. I've done it with sixth grade choirs, beginning sixth grade choirs, advanced treble choirs or whatever. But I love that the all-state ensemble select, high school all-state selected to do this song because it's just beautiful. And it shows that, even if a song is easier, it's still worth being done by an advanced ensemble.
Yep. Agreed.
That's a good point. So you are also a composer, of course. And so, especially at the beginning, I know one of the important aspects of success is self-promotion, right? Trying to get your work out there, seen, done, whatever that might be. And it's also true for a lot of other things, like finding an opportunity as honor choir conductor, or, getting something like the position you have now that other people would love to have too. What have you done? What has been successful? What has not been successful? What have you learned from, those experiences?
Yeah, good question. So from a composing standpoint, when you're first starting out, so I started composing during the pandemic. It was kind of just started, I wasn't really intending on anybody to be singing my works. It was sort of an artistic outlet that, because I wasn't in the classroom with my kids, it was something that I could still do from an artistic standpoint. So that happened. I shared it with some close friends, my first piece or two, and I got the feedback that, oh, you should share this with more people. So yeah, I just started sharing little clips of things on Facebook, and I created a website for myself and started putting it out there, and kind of took off. And yeah, it's an interesting thing, the self-promotion thing, because most people who direct choirs operate in an educational space, whether it's public school or private school or
right,
collegiate, whatever it is. It's a huge percentage of us. And I think there's a certain, there's a service or a certain, I'm going to give of myself and sacrifice.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Element to what we do. So if there's any sort of promotion that gets entangled in that, it might not sit well with people. So that's been a tricky thing to negotiate. On the other hand, if you don't do it, nobody's going to know that I'm sitting in my living room writing music if it's not shared. It's
right. Yeah.
And to be honest with so now I'm publishing, so there's a publishing company that's doing the promotion for me, so that helps.
Nice. Yeah.
A majority of my music is still on my website and on JW Pepper My Score, but yeah, I have some music published with Pavane Publishing now, which I'm really excited about. And then same thing like guest conducting. You don't get an opportunity to do that if people don't know your work. And yeah, you can go to a conference or something and show some people that way. But ultimately, if you're just on an island in your classroom doing great work, it's not going to necessarily be noticed. And so particularly for a person who's not at the university setting or does not have a terminal degree, like, I'm at the point in my career where I really enjoy impacting the profession in this way. So it's, but I think the only reason that really has started to happen is I've shared my work in the world. And so I would love to see, and I think more people are doing it now. I'd love to see even more of, even if it's your beginning ensemble and they've learned to match pitch for the first time, or whatever the case may be. I think we should embrace sharing and uplifting each other's good work in our field. So often we're the only ones in our building doing it. And we really have an opportunity, especially now in this social media driven world, to kind of take advantage of that and share all the goodness that we're all doing.
Right. And I mean, most everyone has some kind of similar experience of I got my kids to match pitch, I mean, whatever level that is from there on up, and so celebrating each other's successes along the journey is great. And showing everyone else that everyone has the same issues, everyone has the same kind of
normal
or similar anyway journey. Every journey is different, but we are all have a very similar profession we work in, just regardless of what level we all teach at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. I really like that a lot. Yeah, do you have anything else you want to add that you think might be beneficial for people to hear? I don't have anything else necessarily that I wanted to talk to you about. I felt like that kind of covered some of the things that I felt would be great to hear from you about.
Yeah, I think we covered everything on the list. I miss my Southwest ACDA people. So I look forward to hopefully connecting at the national conference in Dallas. I hope everyone's planning on attending. It's going to be an epic conference.
Always a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, thanks a bunch. Really appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Nathan.